In this video, we're going to bring you an unboxing and an overview of the brand new Montech Sky 2 case. In the typical Montech fashion, a high-end case in a budget price, but we'll know more about that soon enough. Without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and discover what's inside. Looks like this box took a bit of a beating during shipping. It's just all torn up here, as you can see. Not Montech's fault, but just something I thought I'd mention. But anyway, we can see along the front here, Montech high-end. We see the case here, and then Sky 2 mid-tower ATX case. Fragile. Sky 2, some of the features, specs, and all that good stuff. UPC, serial number. And we're going to go over all of this in this video. Then Montech Sky 2 high-end, more features and specs, English, French, Portuguese, and different languages as well. And then I love seeing this view, the blown apart view of the case, and then the back and the side and the front of the case. So anyway, let's go ahead and open it up real quick. So nothing along the top of the box, although we can see the top of the case right here. So let's go ahead and flip it over. All right, so then along the side over here, we can see the side panel. That wasn't bad. That film on it, and either that's really dirty or there's more film on the inside. It has the two thumb screws right over here. Then a little handle so that you can just pull that out. And it looks like there's some damage over here, but that happens. So pull it out, and then let's see, how does this come out? Okay. And it just slides out once you get it out of the case. And that dirt seems to be right over here. Ah, that's not dirt. That is also some film right over here. So incredibly clean along here. And then the accessory box, and it's been beaten up a little bit. It was originally tied down with some wire over here, but it came loose during shipping. I'll show you the damage over here, right over here, and it looks like it holds the side panel in a little bit. Not incredibly hard to see, but it's not their fault. We can see right over here, one fan as exhaust, and while these fans are facing the way that typically air would blow this way, these fins are reversed so that air comes in. So that's kind of cool, and we'll get into that in a second. And I'll go ahead and remove the rear side panel, which is the same thing, two thumb screws, and thankfully you don't need a screwdriver. There's also a little grill right over here to allow air to come in or air to go out, depending which way you have those fans oriented. And just pull it out, and that one comes out a lot easier. All right, so over here we see a controller with 5 RGBs and then 5 fan hubs. This is a pre-production unit. I was told that the fans right now, because of the controller, will not operate 100%. So that's something to take note of during this review when I get later on into the actual build and the testing. And then another accessory box in the 3.5-inch tray, along with the manual. So coming along the back over here, there are 2 trays for 2.5-inch drives. Comes off easily. You don't need a screw. Thumb screw works perfectly fine. And then when you're done putting it in, you can just screw it back in. Along with the space right over here to put in 2 3.5-inch drives. The tray must be in one of these 2, and we'll get to these in a second. Along here, we have the ARGB connection along with a VDG connection, whichever type of RGB you might have. Then we have a USB 3.0 connection. Then we have the front panel header. The front panel header connects the power button, the hard drive activity LED, and the power LED. Then the HD audio connection for the motherboard, and the USB Type-C connection. In case you have USB Type-C on your motherboard, this does have a USB Type-C connection along the top. This does come installed with 2 120mm ARGB fans with the reversed fins. That way air gets sucked in instead of blown out, whereas typically in this configuration air would get blown out as exhaust. So very interesting in that. Along the rear over here we can see one 120mm fan acting as exhaust, also an RGB fan. There are 7 IO expansion slots here, and then 1 slot down here for a power supply up to 210mm. And then coming along the inside of the case, the rear fan again is an ARGB fan, and we can see around here it looks like the lighting goes around the frame rather than on the blades themselves, and the same over here. So this can be incredibly interesting. Then down here along the bottom of the case we have 2 fans, or 2 options for fans. 120mm fans you can put here, or you can leave it just like this so you can have some intake or exhaust depending on how you have your fans configured. We have a little hole right over here so that we can mount some cables through. And then right over here we have 2 more holes that we can slide some cables through, either coming in or going out. Love when they add those. The case will support ATX, micro ATX, and mini ITX motherboards. And as you can see right over here, has a tremendous cutout for when you need to mount any kind of support on the rear of your motherboard for the CPU, be it air-cooled or liquid-cooled units. Then along the top of the case we can find 2 holes right over here for routing some cables. Also along the front over here for some smaller cables. We can see there is not only enough room for a radiator here, we can move the radiator closer to the front panel, to the side panel. That way we give some more motherboard support and some more heatsink and some more RAM support over here to make sure the radiator or the fans don't fall on top of one of those, but we'll test that soon enough. Then right over here we can find the IO, again with enough space right over here, whereas most cases forget that we might have a top mounted radiator. Now, talking about radiators, we are able to fit right along the side here a 120 or 240mm radiator. Along the top we can fit 120s, 240, 280 or up to 360mm radiator, and then on the rear over here we can put up to a 120mm radiator. Coming along the top over here we can see there is a power button, an LED button, 2 USB 3.0s, a headphone jack, a microphone jack, and a USB Type-C jack. Then as I was mentioning up here, you can fit up to a 360mm radiator. You can unscrew this back here, this thumb screw, slide it off, and you have access to the screws over here. This will cover the screws, and while it kind of looks like a filter, it's not. It's more of a mesh, but typically we have air exhausting from here, so you really don't want to filter over there. Actually, you may not even want to put this in there, unless of course you want to make the top look sexy all the time. And then here's where I was mentioning that we had 3 slots, but actually we have 2. You can put your radiator here, depending if you have a 120, 240, 360, or here. So you have 3 different spots, but that's also going to depend on the size of the fans on the radiator, and of course the size of the radiator. Now coming along the front over here, we can find a glass front panel with this film along the front and back. But the front panel here again is glass, so there is no airflow here. All the airflow is going to come from these 2 side fans. Then also, if you remember right along here, there is the option for 2 fans, and then you can notice down here at the very bottom, there is a meshing. So if you have fans over here blowing air upwards into the case, it's going to be sucking the air from over here, not just from within the shroud itself, which would be hot air. So there is some intake potential there if you'd like as well. And one thing I just noticed inside of the case, there is a badge on the inside. It is nice, and if you don't like it, I'm sure you could take it off, but I kind of like it in silver. So along the bottom of the case, you have 1, 2, 3 holes for cable management. Then along the tray of the motherboard, we'll find 2 more holes right over here with rubber grommets so that you can slide cables what may look like behind the motherboard or under the motherboard. 2 right over here, and then 1, 2, 3 right over here. So 3 along the bottom, 3 along the top, and 2 along the sides. 8 different places here for better cable management. So with the accessory box, starting with the one that was in the tray, we have a bag of goodies. We have 10 zip ties. Then we have some dust caps for the USB Type-C, the headphone jack, the microphone jack, and the USB ports. That's nice. I've never seen anybody include that before. You can see that right over here. That's incredibly nice. And then incredibly important, two tools they provide you here. One is the PC speaker, not so that you can listen to music through your PC, but so that you can diagnose issues on your PC. I'll go ahead and link a video up above so you can see the uses for these. Then they also include a standoff socket so that you can put this over a standoff and then use a Phillips head screwdriver to screw that in, tighten it up, making it so much easier. I have a little collection of those. Then 8 hard drive screws. See these kind of odd screws. 8 of those. 8 fan screws that you would use for along the bottom of the case. See that right down here. Clear up here and then threaded along the bottom. So you can actually screw into the fan itself. 33 motherboard and SSD screws. These little screws right over here. 12 AIO screws, which is awesome because typically it's included on AIOs, not with the case. So these thicker screws, Phillips head of course, so 12 of those. 3 additional eATX standoffs, though oddly enough this case only calls for ATX, so that might be interesting. 3 additional of these. And then 8 power supply or PCIe screws for the 7 expansion slots, or for, well, and the power supply. The 7 expansion slots already have screws with them. These are just extras. And then what looks to be 3 separate straps all tied together for cable management, Velcro straps. So it's kind of nice that they include them here. Pretty cool. Looks like one, but they're all tied together. So that's it with that one. So let's go to the next accessory box. And then in this accessory box, which looks torn up as well, there is an additional fan. Now this additional fan you can use wherever you'd like, but typically what they include it for, with the additional screws provided, is so that you can put it right along here. Yeah, right over here, so you can have some airflow come in. And then these also have the reversed fins, which is why it looks a little bit odd. Typically the fins would be like this for air coming into the case, and this would be over here, and then everything's kind of reversed. So anyway, we'll see some of that soon in the build video. Then we have, for this fan, the ARGB connection, and then the PWM connection for a 4-pin header on the motherboard. So down here, where you can fit all the cables, you would find where you can slide the power supply into. There are 4 rubber feet over here for anti-vibration and anti-noise. Then to mention this tray right over here for the 2 3.5-inch drives, you can undo here with your fingertips, the thumb screw, and slide out. Notice there is no additional tray in here. So these are essentially only for 3.5-inch drives, unless you buy a converter that'll convert from 3.5-inch to 2.5-inch for an SSD, or a smaller mechanical drive, like for a laptop or along those lines. So something I wanted to mention there. And you slide that back into place. Along the rear over here, where the power supply would be, we can find a removable filter. That way you can just, after a few months of use, remove this, clean it out under the faucet, dry it, make sure it's totally dry before you put it back in, and just slide it back in. Definitely something you want. You don't want dust and everything to collect inside of your power supply. Then we can find 2 feet back here with rubber pads, along as 2 feet over here with rubber pads as well. So these feet give us about 153.35 millimeters of space for your power supply to breathe. The more the merrier on that one. Then also, it looks like right now the hard drive tray is along these two over here. Looks like we can move it back about an inch towards the power supply, but it's probably better to keep it towards the front over here. So far in my unboxing and overview of the Montech Sky 2 case, we found out a lot of things. First off, I really like this case. It's got a bunch of features, but there are some downfalls as well. First off, it has a pretty big storage limitation. You can only fit two 2.5-inch drives on the back of the motherboard, be it SSDs or mechanical drives, only two. Then along the bottom front side of the case, you can fit two 3.5-inch drives. Now you can get around to fitting 2.5-inch drives, but you will have to buy adapters for those. Along the bottom of the case, we can fit an extremely long power supply, so that's pretty awesome. And there aren't a bunch of cables to get in the way. That 3.5-inch drive tray could potentially be a problem, but we can work around that since we're able to move it around a little tiny bit, at least about an inch. On the back of the tray, there isn't a ton of room to fit fatter cables through like the ATX 24-pin cable, but we'll see during the build video coming up next. I like the way that they included 3 fans, actually 4 fans, 1 in the accessory box, 3 of which are reverse fans so that the blades are reversed so that where it looks like air would be coming in, it's actually coming out, or vice versa, however you want to do it. But it's really nice, and I like the way that they added that RGB ring to it, and we're going to see how that works in the next video. The front cover looks nice with its glass or maybe plastic, but either way it looks really nice. I like the way that looks. Then along the front and the side over here, the way that it is a mesh, not a filtered mesh, but a mesh so that air can come in for those 2 fans that you could potentially put along the bottom. I think that's a great idea to get more airflow inside of the case. And the fact that you can fit up to a 360 millimeter radiator along the top. And as for right now, it looks like we have plenty of space. And of course, I'm going to test that during the build video. And lastly, I love the fact that it includes 8 different holes where you could slide cables through for better cable management, especially those 2 45-degree angle rubber grommets. I think that's awesome along the fans. So that's my opinion right now on the Montech Sky 2 case. There will be a lot more coming soon on that, but let me know down below what you think about this unboxing and overview. Do you like the case? Do you hate it? And if you don't like it, what don't you like about it? Or what do you like about it? Anyway, this is Iggy with ThisBytesForYou out. See you guys.